Hi, welcome to Battery Optimizations. In this section, we are going to discuss Doze Mode and App Standby, Lazy First, and Android and Ecosystem. Doze Mode and App Standby. In this video, we are going to discuss what is Doze Mode, what is App Standby, and optimizing your app for Doze Mode and App Standby. Doze Mode was introduced in Android 6. Doze Mode extends battery life when the device is not charging and not being used. So it's a method that's used for when the device is idle, essentially, to elongate battery life. Periodically, the system exits Doze Mode for a brief time to let applications complete their deferred tasks, which application developers can use in order to elongate battery life as well. During this maintenance window, the system runs all pending synchronizations, jobs, and alarms, and lets the applications access the network briefly, and then after it's complete, the system goes back to Doze Mode. Over time, the system schedules maintenance windows less and less frequently, helping to reduce battery consumption in cases of longer-term inactivity when the device is not connected to a charger. So this definitely elongates the battery life when the device is not connected to a charger. As soon as the user wakes the device up by moving it or turning on the screen or connecting it to a charger, those are the three requirements for Doze Mode, then the system exits Doze Mode and all apps return to normal activity. So let's take a look at how this works. Let's say for some period of time, you have some sort of usage, you're watching something or whatever, and then you turn off your device and your screen is off and your phone is stationary and you are on battery. So it means you're not holding your device and walking, you're definitely not using your phone, and you're not charging your phone. So it's just sitting there, for example, on a desk or something, and the screen is off. So after that, once those three conditions are met for some period of time, a timer starts, and then after that timer ends, Doze Mode kicks in. So what Doze Mode does is it essentially knocks down your power consumption and your network usage and all these jobs and synchronizations to elongate the battery life of the device. After a little period of the Doze Mode, a maintenance window opens up where these scheduled tasks and synchronizations and alarms can kick back in and do their job, and applications have access to the network again. But as you can see, it's a very short window, and then Doze Mode kicks back in. You'll notice that the second time that Doze Mode happens, it stays for a little bit longer than the first time. But then a second maintenance window opens up again for applications to use the network again for a brief period of time. After that again, Doze Mode kicks in one more time for a longer period of time, followed by a similar maintenance window and then a longer Doze Mode. And this sequence keeps reproducing until the user wakes up the device. App Standby was also introduced in Android 6. App Standby defers background network activity for applications with which the user has not recently interacted, meaning the user probably doesn't care too much about this application at the moment. App Standby allows the system to determine that an application is idle when the user is not actively using it. The system makes this determination when the user does not touch the application for a certain period of time and none of the following conditions apply. The first condition is that the user explicitly launches the app, so doing this would turn off App Standby. The app has a process currently in the foreground, meaning an activity basically. So if you have an activity in the foreground, meaning it's being used, again, App Standby will not kick in. The app generates a notification that users see on the lock screen or in the notification tray. So if your application has a notification and it was on standby, App Standby will then stop. Or the app is an active device admin app, which is unlikely, but if that's the case, then App Standby never runs for admin apps. So these four conditions here need to always be met. So one of these four conditions needs to be met in order for App Standby to kick in. When the user plugs the device into a power supply, the system releases applications from the standby state, allowing them to freely access the network and to execute any pending jobs and synchronizations that were waiting. If the device is idle for long periods of time, the system allows idle apps network access around once a day, whatever work they need to get done. So this is to ensure that basically when you're using your device, App Standby will constantly be disabled for the applications that are being used, because you don't want to limit the user's enjoyability and their fun when they're using the application or their productivity, especially on the applications that they're using. But if an app is not being used, then App Standby can kick in. And most of the time it kicks in and it gets enabled when a device is just sitting there on a desk, on a chair, whatever it is, not being used and it's not charging. So basically the battery is being consumed at a normal rate. So app standby and Doze mode kick in to elongate the battery life of the device. Optimizing your app for Doze mode and app standby. Most apps will function normally across Doze cycles without any modifications. You should optimize the way your app manages the network, alarms, jobs, and synchronizations by using the libraries provided by the Android framework. You'll notice that if you try to do your own thing when it comes to these tasks, such as network tasks, alarms, jobs, and synchronizations, doing your own thing will typically cause more problems than solutions. So you should always try to use the Android framework because it will help elongate the battery life of your application and give an overall good experience to your users. The Doze restriction on network access is also likely to affect your application, especially if the app relies heavily on real-time messaging. If your app requires a persistent connection to the network to receive messages, you should use FCM or Firebase Cloud Messaging, which has some settings that you can allow to persist a connection to the network. To confirm that your app behaves as expected with Doze mode, you can use ADB or Android Device Bridge commands to force the system to enter and exit Doze mode and observe your application's behavior.